and welcome to my channel. I'm Fornax, and today I am doing my Patreon Q&A for, well, a lot of months. I've missed it a while, so apologies for that. So I'm going to just read the questions that have been posed to me by my patrons and give my honest, unscripted answers. This could be a bit rambly. Okay, so I'm going to start alphabetically, I think. Let's have a look. So, starting with, of course, the one and only Ada. Now, if you don't know, Ada has been a long-standing patron of mine, and she's also a good friend, and she is one of the driving forces behind my channel and my content. She challenges me and pushes me, and she also helps many creators in the community, from Jedbro and MMO Inks, supporting them and helping them as she can. She is a moderator on Jedbro's Twitch channel, and she is just an all-round force of nature. Okay, so her first question: how ever do I keep track of all my video ideas? Well, I have a list. Now, she knows this because I've opened up my my kind of to-do lists to my patrons. If you're a patron of mine, you get access to like my hard drive and videos and images and everything beforehand, and all my ideas and all the sheets and everything. So I have a big sheet, and I also take note of comments as well. So if someone, so this is not only like keeping track of the ideas, but also requesting from the community what they want to see. Yes, so I am a woman of many lists. Okay, next question. If you were stuck in game, which race/racial city would you want your kids to be in? I think I would want them to be in the Grove. There's a very wholesome atmosphere in the Grove. The Nightmare Court aspect aside, it's a beautiful place. Green spaces are good for mental health. It's very clean. There's no bars or brawls or that kind of tantalizing pull for younger people, you know. I would say the Sylvari city of the Grove. Yeah, I don't know. Race? I don't know. I mean, I like the idea of not having to like do the horrible tiny baby phase with the vomiting, and then so children being born like pod people, pop, entire human being. That sounds much more efficient to me, less time consuming. So yes, Sylvari and the Grove. Okay. Do I think the Char have a better way of raising children than humans? I think, especially with the most recent patch, we've seen that the Char have not just taking the children, like raising them in a kind of like a little pack, and kind of removing them from their biological parents and supplanting them with a constructed family. It's very much a militarized society. So it's kind of, it reminds me of the Marine Corps mentality. You know, it's the core before everything. It's the man stood beside you is your brother. It doesn't matter who he is, where he's from. If he's in your team, he is your brother, and you have family. And there is a lot to be said for that kind of community, but there is also a lot to be said for the great and deep paternal connections we have with our parents. For a better or worse, not all parents are virtuous, nor are all offspring. But I don't know. I mean, I think there is an argument that there is a requirement for both those elements to be a complete person, to have at least a reasoned relationship with your parents, and to perceive them as people, not just kind of omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent beings, which I think is what very small children do to their parents. They kind of deify them, and I think there is also a place for that, for a sense of community outside of your familial bonds. So I'm going to say, I don't know. It's complicated. You'd have to suck it and see. Also, you know, being an empiricist, I like to have raw data. So opinion is one thing and reason and rationality are another. But actually having information and data about whether it would be better or worse than studies and that kind of peer-reviewed stuff, that's my jam. So I would say, oh no. Okay. Okay. So that's my answer. So the next question is from Dark Griever. Now Dark Griever is a lovely chap. He actually runs my guild along with Ada and Sandrake, and they do lots of things with the community. They're really lovely people. Dark Griever is also a Final Fantasy nut, and I've actually just recently dragged him into Elder Scrolls Online, and he's a lovely chap. I highly recommend, if you see this chap, friend him. He is great. Although he does like to tease Sandrake, my buddy, quite a lot. They have a little bit of a bromance going on. It's quite fun to watch. Anyway, what is his question? Right. Well, here is a question for Guild Wars 2. Did you ever consider that, after having killed 2 Elder Dragons, you would shift to protecting them? Especially since the twist is more interesting than the original idea. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think stories, especially new stories, sort of emergent stories, reflect the society and the societal shifts. They originally described the Elder Dragons as like a force of nature. You know, you don't get angry at a thunderstorm, you just get out of its way. Volcanoes are beautiful, they're destructive, they're terrible, but they're also, 1, they create land, which is quite handy for people to live on, and 2, they're also some of the most fertile regions on our planet. So it's always that double-edged sword of destruction and creation, and I think that the dragons, at least in my mind, always embodied that. You know, I mean, even Zaitan, death being a necessary part of the evolution of every living species that we've ever known of. I mean, longevity is a I don't necessarily going down the rabbit hole here. I think that the aging process is a glitch in our DNA that we could eventually fix, not the death part. If you think about redwoods and you think about some of the very old entities that we have on this planet, there are trees that were old when Catholicism emerged. So I think that so even with the aspect of death, there is also death and life. The two are so integral, so necessary for one another. So I've always seen them in that capacity, and I think that with the changing ideas about our own planet and our own mortality as a species, the idea of shifting from an adversarial, conquering mentality over nature to a respect and a preservation and also acceptance that we are not privy, that we don't have all the information that we need in order to understand what's actually happening and understand the consequences, the unintended consequences of our actions. In the beginning, I genuinely believed that people didn't realise the impact that we're having, because we see ourselves we see the planet as so vast, we see ourselves as so insignificant, really, in the grand scheme of things. We didn't feel that we could even collectively have an impact. And now, in the game's story and in our real lives, we realise that we do have an impact, that our actions do have consequences, and those consequences, if not heeded, could be catastrophic. So, at least for our own survival. So, I think the shift in the story is indicative of a greater shift in mentality, and trying to tell stories like this. This is how you change the perception of generations in narrative. One of my guildmates, Grace, and she is a very, very bright lady, and she thinks that games are the new art form, the new form of expression. And games are also the great leveler and equalizer of people. So I think that it's not surprising that we're getting more stories. This idea of personal responsibility, of democratized heroism, that it is incumbent on us as a collective to take responsibility, that there is no hero who's going to fly in and save us. We have to save ourselves, and we have to take responsibility for the unintended consequences of our actions and the actions of previous incarnations of ourselves and generations. So, again, I think it's complicated. Okay, let's go. People will regret asking these questions. Okay, so I am moving on to Medivac. Now, Medivac is recently become a patron. He's a lovely chap. He doesn't get as much time in game as he would like, I don't think, because he is a fairly industrious human being. And he's actually recorded his questions. So I'm going to let him ask his questions, and then I will answer them.
What role or class do you generally gravitate to in any game you play, and why?
So I like to play... I like independence. So if we're talking about solo play, I like to play where I can be completely independent. I can just go off and do what I want and tackle all the story and the environment in an independent way. So that would mean that I'm kind of a hybrid. I gravitate towards hybrids, and of course in Guild Wars 2 specifically, everyone has that agency. You are from an elementalist to a warrior. You are able to go out into the world, tackle all the story content as an independent entity with being able to self-sustain. When it's talking about group play, I tend to gravitate towards healers / support and tanks. I like that group dynamic. I like damage dealers. Damage dealing is a very specific art form. It's a very specific game style whereby you have to know your rotation. You have to know your rotation. You have to know the counters, and it becomes muscle memory. Yep. And I'm not that keen on that kind of repetitive kind of experience. I like to have reactive gameplay where I have to think about it. So when I'm playing a healer, I'll have to think about what I'm doing, who it's affecting. I have to think about my position. I have to think about what's happening to the players over here and what skills I can put into play to best aid myself, keep myself alive and keep my teammates up, and do whatever buff requirements that I have. So yes, I prefer more reactive. And when tanking, it's not there is a rotation, but you have to be on your toes. You have to be thinking about it. You have to be aware. So yes, that's the type of gameplay that I like.
How did you develop your editing style?
So I've self-taught editing. I think my editing style is very smooth and very flowing. I find myself incredibly loathed and terrified of doing like jump cuts. Yeah, that's me clicking my fingers, by the way. Sorry. Jump cuts. I'm scared of them, but I think jump cuts can be done incredibly well. So I'm hoping, and I'm trying to watch tutorials and podcasts about editing, and because it's a real art form. I think that a lot of people underestimate how much editing molds and shapes the feel of a film. I mean, obviously, any production is only as strong as any of its elements. If the sound quality is rubbish, it's hard to continue to watch it. Which is why I've tried to invest so much in their sound quality with microphones and shields and padding and all sorts of McGuff. But it's also to do with the visual style. When I've been asked about advice about editing, I've always said make it something interesting. People have things to do. People have got shit to do, so you have to be engaged. It doesn't have to be like So for like intensity, like 100% intensity, you get a lot of especially game content creators who are super intense. They're at 10 and they're excited and they're happy and they're just pushing that out. And I can't do that. I don't have that level of energy at all, not at all. Unless we're talking about politics, I'm almost comatose when it comes to my relaxedness, my chilledness. Although I feel that my close friends would probably argue that point. But so I like chilled, but I'm hoping that as I do more editing and as I gain more confidence, that I can move from the kind of smooth, slow flow kind of transition-y type smoothiness. Smoothiness, okay. That I can get into a more proper, I guess, a grown-up style with more diversity in my editing to help shift. At the moment, I generally use, if I'm trying to shift intensity, I'll use my voice to try and convey emotion, and I'll use music. And I think that music is vitally important for mood. I think the best types of music in television and movies is the stuff that you don't really notice. You don't really notice it, but it's like you're in a stream, but you don't notice the flow. You just know that you're moving with the story. So yeah, so my editing style is hopefully evolving, and I'm going to try and improve it. Okay, next question.
What advice would you give an upstarting YouTuber that wants to focus on lore-based videos?
The most important thing as a content creator is to really want to make the content. You have to be passionate about what you are making. If you don't care about the content, if you're really not interested in the game and you're just going through the motions, it will be entirely 100% obvious. There's nothing more interesting. When I was living in Cyprus, I used to listen to a chap on the radio who talked about music, and I like music. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not a passionate follower of it. But he was so passionate about it, so enthused. He knew everything. He knew about these people's lives. He knew about the history and the evolution of the albums that they make, and his passion just shone through. And it was so. Even when I wasn't particularly interested in the genre or the artist, his enthusiasm kind of dragged me in, and I would listen to it. It's very much like if I like Formula One motor racing. I'm not a huge fan, but there's a chap called Ted, and he does Ted's Notebook, and I listen to that, and again, it's his passion, it's his conversation and his passion and how he puts it across that just draws you in and makes you interested in subject matter that you might not normally be interested in. So I would say that the most important thing is primarily passion. Show people you care. Allow yourself to be enthusiastic, allow yourself to feel these things and share them with people. And then the other thing I would say is know your subject matter. Know your subject matter. Make sure that you have done your research. Try to make sure, one of the axioms of any kind of broadcast information, which is what you're giving, if you're giving lore, you are trying to accurately report and convey the story. So know the story. Don't make it up on the fly. Don't guess. Know what you're talking about, which means do research. I think in a world of fake news, I think it's incumbent upon us all to make sure that when we say something, that when we are giving when we are giving an accurate, factual account of story, of anything, that we are as accurate and open and honest as we can be. And then be very, very clear when we are giving opinion. So, especially, and it sounds like a strange thing, but I think I think when you try to be as accurate as you can, and also when you get it wrong, because you will. We are but human. When you get it wrong, be honest. Own it. Accept it. Apologize if necessary. Thank people for helping you. Because there are two types of criticism you can get as a YouTuber. There's the "you suck, go die in a fire" type of criticism, which does not help to man nor beast. And then there is the "your sound is a bit off. Oh, you were talking about this specific part of lore. Did you know that this has happened?" Or "that was the old interpretation, this is the new interpretation." So know your subject matter, be open to criticism, be accurate, be passionate, and what I like to do is I like to try and build the story with the visuals. So whether it's just setting the mood with a moody landscape, or going to the place where the story unfolded and showing images of how it looked now as to how it looked then, or using art, invoke emotion and to complement what you're saying. I think trying to hold the viewer's attention, trying to hold this person who has given you their time, you owe them at least an interesting journey. So that would be what I say.
In Guild Wars 2, why are swords, shields and bows still used while much more advanced technology is present, i.e. guns and airships?
Because players want to indulge in the medieval fantasy. The truth of the matter is that a sword and a shield would not survive in a world of guns and airships and tanks. It hasn't survived in ours. I suppose you could argue that there are regions of the world where that kind of technological advancement hasn't, regions of Tyria, that kind of technological advancement hasn't seeped into, very much as there are more tech-savvy nations in the world that we live in, and less tech-savvy. So I guess it's to do with trade. I guess it's to do with just simply the idea, the player's desire to use these archaic and often beautiful tools in their fantasy roleplay. I know that the traditional wizard's staff is something that we collectively hold on to as an archetype. They are beautiful, they are magical, they are mysterious. But how would it stand up against a machine gun? You know, I don't know. Do you do voice exercises before reading? Nope. No, I don't. I probably should. I tend to record in like bursts. If I'm doing a very long narration, you know, like 2,000 words or something, I'll have a drink of water. My voice kind of starts to crack a little bit. I suppose there are voice exercises I should be doing, but no, the simple answer to that is I am simply not that well prepared. Sorry. Okay, and we're moving on to Sandrake. Sandrake is a guild officer. Brilliant, and he leads a lot of our guild missions, and I have him and he helps out so much. He's a lovely guy. Would you ever consider picking up another fantasy universe like Warhammer Fantasy or Lord of the Rings? If so, which one? If not, why? So yes, I am making content for other fantasy universes because I play those games. I like to make content for the games that I'm interested in. So World of Warcraft I've played since launch, which is many, many moons ago. And the first ever YouTube video I made was about 8 years ago. I made one, and it was kind of like a quirky lore video about my space goat, and it was about Arthas and the terrors that he unleashed upon Northrend. So yes, I made a little video about Destiny 2. I am currently playing Elder Scrolls Online, and I absolutely intend to make content about Elder Scrolls Online. It's a beautiful, massively lore-rich game, and I will be an idiot not to. It's beautiful stuff. I'm genuinely interested in it, and I'm genuinely confused as heck because I never played Skyrim, never played any of the older games. I mean, tell a lie, I downloaded Skyrim, but I like the massively multiplayer online bit. I like being in a world with other human beings, and it felt too isolating for me. So I'm immensely happy that that Elder Scrolls Online exists. It is a chance for me to explore that universe, and there's so much lore. There's so much lore. So yes. Also, I did over Christmas, which is like ages ago now, play through the Star Wars: The Old Republic. I love Star Wars movies. I love Star Wars comics. I love Star Wars: The Old Republic. It is a fantastic game. It's a fantastic single-player game. How it stands up as a massively multiplayer online game, well, that's open for debate. But the world, the stories, the gameplay, the narrative gameplay is brilliant. So yes, I just need more hours in the day. So here's the question. I remember you once said you didn't want to be called boss. They call me boss. I don't know why they call me boss. I think it's something to do with Solid Snake. So what short and sweet nickname would you want us to call you by? I have gone by the in-game name of Fornax forever. So just call me Fornax or Foxy. Those two are fine. I answer to anything other than slurs. But you guys like calling me boss, and I've asked you to stop, and you're like, no, we don't want to. So I've given up. That's fine. I shall accept my fate. Now, Sebastian was the very first person to ever become my patron, so he will forever hold a special place in my heart. He's also a wonderful chap, very, very bright. Okay, so for the next expansions, would you rather go back to areas we've already seen in Guild Wars 1, or are you more interested in exploring completely new areas and continents? I want it all. I want my cake and I want to eat it. Is that very selfish of me? I would love to see the game developers go to Cantha. I love the art, the architecture, the costume, the spectacle of Cantha was amazing. Even back in the day with the old graphics. So I can't imagine what they will look like. They have such a fantastic art team. They're just that they've created consistently from the original campaigns onwards some of the most breathtaking, beautiful, extraordinary art that you could ever imagine, and beautiful, extraordinary environments you could ever imagine. For me, I play games because I love to climb into the pages of fantasy worlds and live in them and breathe that world. And so gaming for me is a natural extension of reading, yes. So I want to explore the old world. I want to see the beauty and splendor and tragedy of all the peaks and troughs of its success and failure. And I also want to see new. I love new. I am terrible. I drive my hubby completely nuts with like, oh, new shiny thing must have. I am completely fickle. Fickle is the word. I am so fickle. So I want to see new worlds. I want to see if we do eventually get off world to explore other planes. Are we going to follow the gods into the mists and to other worlds? Are we ever going to get the chance to go to the humans' original world? Because as much as humans and Tyria are synonymous, humans originate on a completely different planet, possibly plane of existence. And I would love to see that. I would love to be able to go back in time somehow. And I know that World of Warcraft kind of stumbled over that in one of their previous expansions, but it would be interesting to be able to go back in time, to be able to see the Masat in all their glory, to be able to witness somehow how the other races survived, to see Glint in all her splendor, going out into the world and rescuing and saving nations, to see the Jotun at the height of their prowess. There is a world beneath our feet. It was touched on in The Eye of the North, but the subterranean world, the world of the dwarves, the delvers, that world would be fascinating. The original world of the Asura, that kind of completely alien place. Now you can argue that we did delve a bit into the earth when we did the Heart of Thorns, but I would say that is an untapped resource. I would love a expansion around an oceanic landscape. Now I know that they have shied away from this kind of aquatic combat, but there's nothing to stop them copying or taking inspiration from World of Warcraft, who had mechanics that allowed players to behave underwater and have combat underwater that was very similar to land-based combat. So I want to explore many worlds. That's what I love to do. I love the exploration, I love the beauty, I love the history. So if they want to go old school, yes. If they want to do something wild and crazy and new, 100% yes. That's why I love gaming. The only limit to our exploration in gaming is our imagination. Okay. Now Shaggy is asking the final question for this Q&A, and Shaggy recently won the Patron portrait competition, so I'm currently painting a picture of his beautiful Sylvari. And their question is, one thing I was wondering was, how did it all start? You wanting to know about Guild Wars 2 lore, was it carried over from previous games, or was it part of the roleplay? So I can tell you a little bit about my history with Guild Wars. So I started playing Guild Wars in Prophecies. I fell in love with the game. It's a beautiful game, and I was also playing World of Warcraft at the same time. So I was playing both these games at their launch, and I played. I loved it, but when I first started playing MMOs, I was very reluctant to jump into groups with other people. I was cautious to want to group with people. So a lot of the stuff that I would have been able to do if I'd just taken that leap and trusted my gut and gone and trusted my gaming community, I would have had a lot better experience and maybe got into content creation earlier. But my passion for the lore of Guild Wars was inspired with the roleplay. You're quite right. My guild was heavily into roleplay in Star Wars The Old Republic. We played a heck of a lot. We had fantastic, long, detailed storylines. We had a brilliant community that did lots of online forum stories where we'd write a story together, and that collaborative kind of creative process. And I really loved it. I loved the lore. And then we transitioned as a guild over to Guild Wars 2, should I say, at launch. And I wanted to reflect in my character the kind of deep knowledge that is possible to be endowed upon all Sylvari via the Pale Tree and the Dream of Dreams. So I needed to know my stuff. So I got into the lore. I got into watching Wooden Potatoes. I got into reading the lore books. I got into reading the wikis. I got into reading the lore from the previous game. Now, I'd skimmed, I'd played through it. I knew what I was doing at the time when I was playing the original campaigns, but I hadn't retained that knowledge, and I hadn't kind of put it all together, because it is a massive tapestry of human lore and Char lore, and then with the Sylvari and the Asura, and they all have their own unique cultures, identities, and stories associated with them. So in conclusion, yes, the role-playing really did kind of open my eyes. I've always loved story. I'm always fascinated, and I always want to play through all the stories of the games that I play. If they don't have a narrative, they don't really hook me in. My natural love of story and narrative married to my role-playing, and eventually the role-playing led to me creating the role-playing newspaper of the Crichton Herald, and then that evolved eventually into the channel and me making these lore videos and guides and all the rest of the things that I do at the moment. So thank you for listening to my Q&A. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I answered your questions as fully and honestly and openly as I could. I also hope if you have any questions that you would like to pose to me, that you would like me to answer, be they about Guild Wars or about World of Warcraft or Elder Scrolls or any game or any real life things as well. I get quite a few fun questions in the comments asking about science and cosmology and all sorts of things, which I do love. So please do pop them in the comments below and I will do my best to collate them into another Q&A session. Of course, I guarantee that if you become a patron of mine, that I will answer all questions asked. I have a very strong connection with my patrons. I am open and available to them all the time. I do my best to make sure that they understand how much I value their support. They allow me to keep going. I would not be able to commit the time I do to my channel if it was not for them. Absolutely 100%. So, thank you to my patrons, to Ken Schneider, Ada, Craig, and all my fantastic patrons. It is because of your support, because of your contribution, that I am able to buy fantastic microphones to make my audio great, to dedicate my time, my effort, my energy to content creation. It allows me to keep going despite the YouTube algorithm hating my channel. And I honestly cannot thank you all enough for what you do for me. And I'm going to continue to do my best to make sure you know how much I appreciate you. I'm overwhelmed by how fantastic and great you all are. So I will say thank you very much for watching. I hope you will join me again, but until then, as always, thanks for watching.